so we're good.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to get started. It's 6:03 on June 20th, 2024. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Katie, the city planner. I don't usually conduct meetings, but because we had a resignation of our past chair, Bob, from the planning commission. So I want to thank him for his service. He spent more than 4 years on the planning commission, and we really appreciate his service. Being on the planning commission is a thankless job, and he spent a lot of time and effort digging in and trying to help. So, and he helped a lot with Frontier Days too. He ran the concession shack one year and helped another year. He's helped out the city a lot, so we want to thank him for that, his service. And at this point, we also need to elect a new chair. So, do you have anyone that wants to volunteer themselves or someone else?
I nominate Justin.
I nominate her because she's had the most experience.
This is my second
But
planning.
you've been on a planning commission before, and you have a degree in
Public administration.
public administration. So that overqualifies you for this.
I don't think
You want to wait?
so. What?
If you want to wait, I will do it, but
Perfect,
if
Justin
you
will
don't
do
want
it.
to do it, then
I think it should go by seniority.
I think you should go by experience.
Well, that sounds like Justin either way. so.
I don't know about that.
How about you? No,
Yeah,
I
that's why she made a motion.
Kim?
I already have too much going on.
Okay, well, Justin's good with it, sounds like.
Okay, so do we have a motion
I make a motion
to?
to make Justin the chair of the Francis Town City Planning
Francis
Commission.
City Planning Commission.
You're gonna need a second.
We need a
so
second.
That's gonna be a problem.
I'll second him.
Okay, let's take a vote.
I
Aye.
Okay, Justin, you're our new chair. If you'd like, you can move into the middle. You can just stay where you are.
I think for tonight, I'll just stay where I am.
Okay, Kim, if you want to feel like you're not on the outside there, you can switch over. Or you're in where you're at. Okay.
All
she's a
right.
confident person, she doesn't need people.
Okay, I just don't want anyone to feel isolated, so.
No.
So Justin,
Okay,
it's all of you now. Do you want to keep Rich as the vice chair?
sure.
Okay, fantastic. All right,
Is that
so
Rich?
that takes care of our first, Cynthia. That's our first two items of business. So now we're on to item number 3, which is a public hearing.
Yeah, so should we open it up for public comment?
Usually I do my staff report
Oh, that's
first, and then we have the developer speak and add anything they'd like, and then we open up for public hearing.
Let's do that.
But you can choose. You
No,
want to mix it up?
You're gonna have to remind me because I never paid attention. So go ahead.
I'm just here to.
Staff report, please.
Okay, thank you. All right, this seems a little low. Okay, everyone can hear me good? Okay. So I'm gonna switch over to the Burton Ranch annexation packet. So the location on this potential annexation that we're going to talk about tonight is north of the intersection of Lambert Lane and Helen Road. It's 3 parcels that together are a little over 92 acres, and they touch up against the city's sewer ponds. So they're on the north side of our annexation declaration boundary, but they are within the boundary. We can get to that more in a minute. Okay, so in March 2024, Red Raft with Annapurna Capital Partners filed an annexation petition for 3 parcels, CD 590, 599, and 600. So the proposal right now is to develop about 25 acres of those on the south side of the canal. I'm gonna go ahead and go to the proposed concept plan. Sorry for the scrolling. This is the official boundary survey that was submitted with the petition. And then here's the concept plan. I'm gonna zoom in on the development area, because that's what we'll be talking most about tonight. But even this concept plan doesn't even show it all because it's so much open space, it's hard to get it all on there. Okay, so they're proposing to develop 25 acres south of the canal and 1 acre, about 1 acre north of the canal. You can see these two parcels here that are also proposed. And then they would develop that about 26 acres into 104 units, a subdivision in Burton Ranch. The remaining 66 acres of open space north of the canal would be placed in an agricultural conservation easement. So a little bit of background, we did hold a joint work session about this annexation, potential annexation on May 2nd, excuse me. And back in April, the city council decided to accept the petition for further consideration. So that's why we're here tonight. We're considering this annexation. The applicant did also apply back in September of 2022. And with that application, the council decided not to accept the petition for further consideration. So they didn't get to this point they're at now. They just rejected it at the first meeting. So the annexation process is pretty long and involved, and right now we're at the end of that process where we have public hearings, and we have a public hearing with the planning commission, and then we have a public hearing with the city council. So we've got 2 public hearings, one tonight and then one whenever this goes to the city council. So let's get into what we usually look at when we're looking at an annexation is the general plan. We look at what the general plan guidance is, and that helps the planning commission make a recommendation and helps the city council make a decision on the annexation. So we recently updated our general plan last year. So this guidance was fairly recent. The first goal that is applicable is the land use goal 1. And it says to encourage development that respects and preserves the character of Francis. And there are 4 policies under that goal that are applicable to this application. Policy 1A is to encourage residential development to occur in conservation subdivisions, preserving open space. Policy 1C is to support continuation of agricultural land uses in Francis. 1D, identify and designate environmentally sensitive lands, scenic views, and important open spaces to limit the adverse impacts of development on any of these lands. And policy 1E, maintain an open space system that enhances quality of life, is interconnected, preserves environmental quality, and protects development from natural hazards. So my analysis, I'd say that the applicants are planning a conservation subdivision, which is following the general plan. Over 70% of the land will continue to be used for agriculture in perpetuity, and 30% will be developed and will no longer be used for agriculture. So there is a trade-off there. The property is under contract for $6 million right now. And if the city wanted to purchase that property and keep it all as open space, we'd have to pay the $6 million, and that would be a cost of about $10,000 per household. Of course, we would bond, but I don't think that's even really an option for the city. I don't know that we would make that choice. The open space is adjacent to the city's sewer ponds. The city's continued use of these ponds and their potential expansion will be protected by the large buffer of open space. If the land is not annexed, then future development would be probably allowed to occur next to the ponds, and so we would have to purchase a buffer property to make sure that we didn't have development right there by our ponds. One of the things we look at is the National Wetlands Inventory, and that showed that there are potential wetlands in this area. So the developer would be required to complete a wetland study before plat approval, and I would recommend making that part of the annexation agreement, is that they would have to complete that study and show that the area for development doesn't have wetlands or can be mitigated. The open space area is connected to other agricultural areas and is near your property. Many of you know it's under contract by Summit County for potential conserved open space. The second goal in the general plan is applicable here is land use goal 2. And it says carefully plan for growth, ensuring development occurs in suitable locations. Policy 2A, prioritize development within the existing Francis boundaries. 2B, guide land use and growth decisions through application of the general plan, zoning map, and the future land use map. And 2C, density increases should be considered only upon demonstration of adequate infrastructure, resource availability, and benefit. Looking at those 3 policies and that goal, we already have over 500 entitled housing units within current city boundaries. So those are units that haven't pulled a building permit. We've approved a subdivision, we've approved development there, but no building permits yet. So looking at that guidance from the general plan, it might be more desirable to fill in areas that have already been entitled or they're near the center of the city before extending the boundary northward. One of the things we also look at is the future land use map, and it shows that this area will be zoned Ag 2. And the zoning that's being requested is Ag 1. So this is a little more dense. It's twice as dense as what the future land use map would show. So also we look at our utilities and our services. So the city should evaluate whether to provide water and sewer infrastructure for an additional 104 units. Adequate water shares, they have to turn in the water. They have to supply the water for the development by turning in the water shares, and then they have to build all the infrastructure. There are several benefits to the annexation. The conserved open space, especially proximity to the city sewer ponds, that's the main benefit. The property was formerly in the West Hills Incorporation area, but per the applicant's request, they've excluded it. So they would like to work with Francis, which would probably be less density overall. Another benefit of annexed is that it would be within the city's jurisdiction. So instead of having the West Hills Incorporation or Summit County deciding what can happen with this land, Francis City has jurisdiction. So we get to choose. Then looking at the city code, especially in relevance to this concept plan, the city code says that the city planner, that's me, shall review the application and survey of the annexation area and evaluate the feasibility of the subject expansion of the city's boundaries. So then I'm looking at the map and where we already have city boundaries. We want to make sure we don't overlap with another city's expansion area, which we're not. We want to make sure we're not creating an island or a peninsula, which we would not be doing that with this annexation. And then making sure we can provide the services and that it says to look in the next 20 years, making sure we have enough land suitable for development and growth in the next 20 years. So looking at that, our population is projected to grow by about 1,000 in the next 20 years. And if we estimate that there's going to be about 2 people per household, that looks like we need about 500 units. We already do have 500 units entitled in the city, but some of those have been entitled for 20 years, so it's hard to know when they're actually going to be developed. And I think that covers most of it. Let's see. Oh yes, the roads. So the main access roads are Lambert and Democrat Alley. The applicant provided a trip generation memo, and the memo said that the area has the capacity to accommodate the projected demand of the site. An intersection analysis and new counts would be needed to determine the access level of service and delay for the turning movement, ingress and egress. So the study says that they have the capacity, but we would recommend if this annexation is approved, that in the annexation agreement, we require that there be an additional study to determine if a turn lane on Lambert is required. One of the other issues is that Summit County has been planning for a long time to have a collector road going from Hallam Road, it's called the Hallam Collector, it would go from Hallam all the way across this open space to 248. So a more direct way to get to 248 instead of having to go on Lambert and Democrat Alley. They've been planning this for a long time, and it hasn't happened yet. And the city feels like it really does need to happen. We want to see this collector road go through. We think it's needed. But we are concerned about the cost of that, because if we annex it into the city, then the city would want to see that collector road go through, and it's through the annexed city property, through the city boundaries, then we would be responsible for that. There may be talk with the county, and there may be funding available, but it's really not guaranteed. So that is one risk, is that it probably would happen right away, but eventually we'd have to look at that road and find a way to pay for that. So that's, let's see. Like I mentioned before, the concept plan is proposing AG1 conservation subdivision, and the future land use map showing AG2. The conservation subdivision allows for clustering of residential lots, and it also preserves open space. So in the Ag1 zone, they are required to have at least 50% open space. This application places over 70% of the annexed land in open space, so they are exceeding that requirement quite a lot. They also, conservation subdivisions offer a development incentive, so that incentive is 15%. So the 92 acres would be 92 homes plus a 15% incentive, which is 14 homes. So altogether, that's 106 units, and they're proposing 104 units. Townhomes are allowed up to 25% of the number of units in a conservation subdivision, and they are planning 21, which is less than the 25%. One of the things I noticed is that they're planning a narrow alley. That's not the usual width we have on a standard city road in this area with the townhomes and some of the single family homes. And we have seen some alleys in some developments lately, but we would require that be approved by the fire district to make sure that they can have access there. And we want to get that approval prior to annexation. Also, lots 51 to 54 have access on Lambert Lane, which we really don't like to see. We consider Lambert a collector road. We try to avoid having driveways on a collector road. There are some exceptions, but generally we try to avoid that. And then another potential collector road is where the Hallam extension would go through, so this road. And then up to here, you can see there's a future right-of-way through the open space for the future collector. But part of this road would be on the collector. There's a lot of driveways on there. We don't really like having, we just don't like having driveways on a collector road. So I would hope that we could look at a different arrangement there. And our code goes through the arrangements that we would like to see, that we prefer. I won't get into that tonight. So, also, last of all, the collector in our code, it says a collector road should be 44 feet. It looks like they're planning that to be 30 feet. And that's the asphalt, not the right-of-way. A right-of-way for a collector is 70, and for a regular road is 60. So they kind of plan this to be a regular road. We'd like to see that the collector widths. So my recommendation is for the planning commission to discuss the drawbacks of the annexation and the benefits. And this is a legislative item, so you can make any of the following actions, whatever you feel like is the most appropriate in this case, after discussion. So you can positively recommend the annexation for approval. You can suggest conditions, and I've mentioned a lot of those in my staff report. I highly recommend conditioning the recommendation with those. So add the conditions if you make a positive recommendation. Also, if you feel like the benefits are not exceeding the drawbacks, you can have a negative recommendation and forward that to the city council. Or you could table this item if you feel like you don't have enough information to make a decision right now, you can table this item. But we have to be very clear about what information you want to get back before we have this decision again. So this is a public hearing item, and we did notice the hearing, posted the notice and mailed it in accordance with state and city code. That's it for me.
Gotcha. So then we should give the developer an opportunity. Is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
Maybe the only thing we could add is that from a year or 2 years ago, when we put the first application in, we had much more density and on both sides. We pared it down, went to 70, almost 74% open space, I believe.
Yeah.
And much fewer. And also, which would come with, what would come with this open space would be water to preserve it,
Right.
to make sure that there's water to keep it green, because we have a substantial amount of water for this project.
And then we can keep using it for agricultural uses, we won't dry it up.
So what else was there? Oh, I did have a question for you.
Okay.
So on the county road, if you annex it, why does that take it, if it's a county road, why does it take it out of the purview even for funding of the county?
Go ahead, Scott.
We met with Summit County, and what I've got back to them so far is they're interested in this road, and they're interested in partnering with Camas and Francis to see that it happens. So, don't know what that means as far as, I don't know if it's a road that they want to take over and maintain, but once it gets through Francis, then it goes into what Camas is looking at annexing. So, there's gotta be some kind of joint responsibility, or, that's why it'd almost be better if it was a county road. But they're interested in working together with the cities to make it happen, so they would like to see it happen too, so.
So the interesting thing is, once the proposed road goes out of our property, it goes into Francis owned property, which we annex into Camas.
Correct.
It's a wild story.
So Camas will inherit half the cost.
Right.
Shared costs of the future road. I'm hoping the county obviously would be participating on that. The other side of Hallam is all city of Francis?
Yes.
On the
It's
side,
not.
or is it
No.
county?
Yeah, Allen Road is all French.
Oh, Hal, you're talking about the road itself, yeah.
Yeah, the existing Hallam. Yeah.
Yes,
That's
that's
that
city,
way.
it's a city right now.
Well-
There's a little.
Lambert Lane's still partial county, partial city, but Allen is all
It's all
Francis.
city.
City,
Well, they did that study in 2014, so I mean, they've had a lot of time to think about it, but no real drive to make it any real changes. It was probably a need, and there may very well become a need.
They're, yeah, definitely becoming a need because with Hart and Meadow,
Right.
potentially Bird Ranch, there's more happening in that area.
Gentlemen, have anything else? I'm just gonna go through the steps before we open it up here. but-
Please, go ahead, we'll probably, if things come up, we can certainly
Yeah,
interject.
yeah, I like that. All right,
Okay.
open it up for public comment.
Yeah, if you decide to give a public comment, please step up to the lectern and state your name.
Anyone? I'll just make eye contact. Anyone? No takers. All right, we'll close for public comment and
It looks
let.
like somebody was about ready to move.
Oh,
Anyone?
no, we're all here for the second half.
Those are the ordinances.
Okay,
All right,
am I good to close for public comment?
I guess so. I probably would have one.
Going once, going twice, no public comment. I say ladies first.
Did you guys add 2 lots since we last saw this in May? It looks like 55 and 56 are new compared to the other concept plan you showed us.
It's a little bit of a different arrangement. So they did add these 2 lots, but then they subtracted some townhomes. You guys can explain, Catherine.
The reason, I don't really know if you remember in the joint work session, I can't remember who it was, maybe it was us. We mentioned that there would be a caretaker's lot on the other side. We ended up putting 2 lots there because the cost of putting the driveway across the canal would help us get that done. And as a result, like Katie said, we reduced the number of units on the other side. But you can see that there's a lot, but the green lot will still be open space conservation easement, and the building will be limited to what's in the beige area.
It reminds me of Hart.
Right, Hart has two lots that have, they're like a caretaker lot, and they, yeah, there's one home and then a lot of open space. I think it sometimes just goes to sleep, it will come back.
Excellent. It looks like the easement was added, which was one thing I talked about just to protect us in that event, so thank you for that. I'll say it again, just since now I guess it's on the record. The things I love protecting the open spaces. I think everyone here would love to keep Francis the way it was, but that change is inevitable. The city is going to continue to grow. And because we've elected to go with conservation subdivisions as the sort of solution to that, to protecting as much open spaces as possible, I think that this is a really good compromise, especially since essentially 2/3 will stay in conservation, with the potential to connect to county conservation units. It protects our buffer around the sewer ponds, which avoids future taxes for the residents. There's so many great things. I do agree with a lot of the staff recommendations. I'd love to find a solution for the lots on the collector roads. I don't know what that looks like, or how to find that solution to make that feasible. But then, and then the wetland survey, I think, is kind of a no-brainer. Like, we obviously have to protect the city. That's our main benefit. We can't develop over wetlands. So I think those staff recommendations make sense for me. And yeah, other than that, I think I would say I would lean towards a positive recommendation with the suggestions of the conditions outlined by staff.
So West Hills doesn't incorporate, they don't even vote until November, and it's not looking good for them. So if you're turned down by Francis City, will you apply to Camas?
Or county.
Or county?
Yeah.
Okay. Because if a developer comes to me and they say, you know what, I'm not gonna develop 2/3 of my property, that raises some serious red flags for me. Like, why wouldn't a developer develop all their property? And after our meeting last month, it looked to me like it was because most of it is already wetland. And you're developing what you can on the property. And so it looks like the 2/3 that you're not developing is one, to protect the people living next to a sewer, and because it's mostly wetland.
I don't know that it is mostly wetland. We had our plan look at a 2022?
Yeah.
2022 wetland area, and there were some wetlands, but far fewer than you would think.
Well, Scott pulled up the map last month, and it looked to me like it was mostly wetland. There was some property even in the area.
That map here, that was done by the National Wetlands, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. When they do those studies, they just do it from aerials and stuff. If he had a wetland study done, because if you look at the Wagstaff property that's on 248, just on the canal on the same map, it's showing a lot of wetlands, but they have a delineation that says it's not wetlands.
Well, I know it is because all their basements flooded the last real hard winter we had.
Right, so, no, but what I'm saying is, this map is just kind of a general thing that we look at and say, yeah, there could be wetlands, but if they do an actual study of wetlands, it might show that it's actually not wetlands. That's what he's saying, they had to do a study that shows that it was less. I'm just saying, Wagstaff property, you look at this, it has a lot of wetlands, and they eliminated all of it. So,
Until it snows real hard.
well, if the Corps says it's not wetlands, whether it snows and basement floods or stuff like that. There's still water, it's caused by irrigation and things like that. That's when they say it's not, a water that's, protected by the state.
Well, at the same time, we have already approved Hidden Meadows, that's right across the street, not even a quarter of a mile down the road. And then you've got Hard Crossings, which is right across the street, in its third phase. And we're gonna hit that 1,000 in way less than 10 years for projected growth. And my question really to the planning commission is, how do you define responsible growth? Is it putting 1,000 people within a half-mile radius? Because that's basically what we're doing. We're putting over 1,000 people, because we can't guarantee that there's only gonna be 2 people per household, within a half-mile radius, right there on Lambert Lane. And I mean, it's not gonna be long before we turn Francis into Harriman. I contacted Summit County to see how many open permits there were in Oakley, Marion, and Camas. And we're like 5 times the number that all of them are. I mean, we do have over 500 permits out, but a lot of those are getting pulled. Look around, the growth is happening, and it's happening in Francis. We're the brunt of jokes with the other cities, that if you want something approved, go to Francis, that we'll do it. And I just think, I'm all about growth and annexation, as long as it's done correctly and smartly. But when you have those 3 divisions right there within a half-mile radius, I can't define that as responsible growth. It's just not.
Let me answer that a little bit. In terms of responsible growth, obviously you have an infrastructure need every time you approve subdivision. And if you've got them kind of like, think of a big checkerboard where you got one way over here and one far left, maybe a mile or 2 out of that way, and then 3 or 4 scattered all over the place. You've got an infrastructure problem trying to bring services to these, separated by land masses, subdivision growth that the city is trying to manage, versus, in my mind, with Hart Crossing and the other one you mentioned, and us, you've got them all condensed into one area. So you can provide services for that. And you've really got not traffic scattered all over this entire landmass, but you do have it all concentrated on Lambert and your feeders that connect. But you're not absorbing property willy-nilly all over this vast valley, creating subdivisions and trying to support it.
I feel like we're turning it into Harriman overnight. I mean, it's becoming Harriman in the last couple of years. It's just too dense. We can spread it out, that'd be great. But within a half-mile, you have 3 major subdivisions.
Do we have responsible growth defined?
No. Because everybody has a different definition of
It is so
responsible growth.
nebulous. Yeah.
So what is responsible growth to Kim is gonna be a lot different than what it would be to you or to anyone else, and the city has to define that.
And
The best we have is what's in our general plan, the guidance from that.
so I was gonna ask about the general plan, because I feel like there's a big disconnect, and we were all here for that, or I guess we were here for that. I thought the idea was to create these pockets of communities and keep the open space so that we're, to your point, keeping services localized. And yes, we want to build city center out, but in this particular case, there's such an advantageous point to the protected space and to the buffer, and to essentially only developing a third of this, the bang for your buck is where it turns for me. So, I mean, I understand your point about continued growth, but I think to the developer's credit, having been rejected once, he came back with a much bigger carrot. And I think that this is the right decision. I think it creates open space potentially all the way to, that'd be 248 right?
No,
Not
it's
quite
not
all the
open
way.
all the way to
Not quite,
248.
but in theory, could create a vast tract of open space that would then maintain the valley floor, they could be used for agriculture and all those sorts of things, so I hear your frustration, but I interpreted our general planning session over the last year to be entirely different than what you're describing.
I think we've done a fairly decent job in the past with responsible growth. You've got Ivory, the development over in Ivory, which is far from a lot of everything we have. And then stuff that's east of Foothill seems to be spread out. But it's this Lambert Lane is just like, bam, let's just throw everything right there where Howland and Lambert come together. Let's just see how much we can shove in that area.
Is that the result of us going to a conservation subdivision? Because I feel like that's exactly what we asked for.
Yeah, so Stewart's is a conservation subdivision as well. And again, it really is, I think, just a matter of preference because the city hasn't defined. We have said we prefer growth near the city, in the city areas, but we've also said we prefer conservation subdivisions. And I haven't seen any conservation subdivisions that weren't an annexation area. So Hart, Hidden Meadow, and Stewart's were all annexed. And it's one of the tools that we can use during an annexation when we couldn't always use that. So normally if you have someone that's selling family property already within the city and it's zoned residential half, then they can come in and they go half acre lots and there's no conserved open space where when somebody comes to us and says, I want to do an annexation, we say, in our general plan, we want conservation subdivisions. We've decided that we like cluster development. It reduces the amount of maintenance for the municipality because all the water and sewer and roads are in one area. And then we also are accomplishing the goal of having open space. So that was why we have the conservation subdivision, and it's why we use that tool many times in an annexation.
This is just a concept plan, right?
It is a concept. Usually what happens with an annexation is we nail down some of the specifics of the concept plan in the annexation agreement. So we would definitely nail down the total number of units that they'd be allowed to build. Now, there might be some shifting in where those are, what those look like, but they won't be allowed to build, like, if we accept this concept plan, it would be 104, and that would be the max. We're gonna nail down what fees they have to pay to the city if there's an annexation fee, what improvements need to be made, what studies need to be done. All of those things that are required before they can actually start building.
I mentioned this last time that we met and we talked about this concept plan, and I know that our hands are kind of tied. I talked to Katie about this earlier. There was some legislation passed earlier this year, SB 0168, and I'm just gonna put this on record. But there was new legislation passed this year that allows for municipalities to create homeownership promotion zones. So essentially it's like an overlay zone for various zones, but like 6 homes to an acre have to be, so it's fairly dense, but 6 homes to an acre, they have to be deed restricted for home ownership. I think it's a little late in the game where we're looking at the concept plans to be playing with it now maybe. The developers might want to come back with that and kind of look into that. But home ownership is extremely important for me, especially where price points are so extreme in the county. I think that it's extremely important that we enable our kids and our workers, our service workers, to have somewhere to live so that they're not pushed out by secondary homes and vacation homes and multi-million-dollar mansions, but that everybody has a place to live where they work or near family. And so I just want to put that on record that, and I don't know if that's something we can add to the conditions if we did approve it, that I'm assuming this will be in an HOA if they include in their CCNRs that a certain percentage have to be owner occupied, or what we do there, but.
Yeah, you should look at that.
Does anybody have anything else to add? So at this point, we'd be looking for a motion for recommendation to either negatively or positively pass on, most likely with the suggested conditions as outlined, which to my notes are completion of a wetland survey, review of the collector road and width approved by the fire department, and a traffic signal for a turn lane. I missed it. Is it how long?
Sorry, the
Traffic survey for Lambert, turn lane on Lambert. Did I miss anything?
So if you look at my staff report and the staff recommendations, you just want to read that actually will cover it.
I wish that we had public comment. This is the worst part about it being a democratic republic, right? Because we want to do what is best for the citizens of Francis, and we want to do what they want. At the same time, we can only use our own lenses to make this motion right now. And from my lens and my training, what we do is influenced by code and what's already written in code. And so seeing no overwhelming code violations to this annexation, I would motion, I would move that we make a positive recommendation for the annexation approval with the following conditions: the widening of the collector right away to 70 feet, updating the concept plan so there's no direct access to lots from Lambert Lane or the collector street, performing an intersection study to determine if the turn lanes on Lambert Lane should be required, getting approval from the fire district for the alley, completing a wetland study prior to plat approval, and writing in the CCNRs that at least 50% of all homes located within this development must have owner-occupied units.
No.
I'll second.
Okay, let's take a roll call.
Vote. Aye.
No.
All right, moving through our agenda. We have a staff report on the commercial RV campground code.
We do, okay.
Outstanding.
So we first talked about this at our last meeting a couple months ago. The item was tabled, and we've had some time to come back and think about this. I'll go through the background just for the public that wasn't here at that time, so that they understand where this came from and what we're talking about here. So the city, we've had several people asking us recently about commercial RV campgrounds. And if they can do that in certain places, if they're allowed, and they are allowed in the Ag 1 zone and the Ag 2 zone, they have to have a conditional use permit, so they'd have to come back, planning commission and city council for another approval, and we put conditions on that type of business to make it, to make sure that it's going to work for that area, but they are allowed. So the mayor and I have been talking about these RV campgrounds, and we want to make sure that if there is a developer that's serious about doing it, that we have good code in place to make sure that it's done the way that we want to see it be done. We want it to be nice, we want it to be well kept. So that is the goal of this, is to look at the code we have in place now and think about what is going to make that a really nice facility if it does happen here. We don't know if it will or not. But this is just kind of planning for the future and making sure that our code is in a good place, since we've had people asking about it lately. So the way that I've written the amendment focuses on a few things. It would extend the length of occupancy from 30 days to 90 days to accommodate the seasonal people that like the snowbirds that want to come here for the summer and then not be here for the winter that we have. That was our thought there. We also had people that wanted to incorporate cabins into this type of idea, and so we put that in there, but I would love your input on that, if you think that would be a positive thing or a good thing. And then we want to make sure that the streets within the campground are paved. We think that's really important, that they're paved, there'll be less dust, and they'll look nicer. I think they'll be a better fit for the city. And last, we're looking at not requiring that every site have a cooking facility. We feel like a lot of the higher end people that come to these, they already have RVs and the cabins already are, when we do the cabins, they already come with cooking facilities. So we didn't feel like they were necessary in every case. I think it could be nice to have some places in the RV campground that have a cooking facility, but not necessarily required for every site. So we're just gonna open this back up for discussion. It's really, this is exactly what the planning commission gets to do, is look at code and decide what we think is gonna be the best direction for the city. We already did have a public hearing for this item, so we don't need a public hearing today. But it's up to, the planning commission if they want to entertain any public comments on that. So anyway, it's basically the same code that we looked at last time. I didn't make any changes because I didn't feel like we had any. I think the direction from last time was, okay, let's keep talking about this, and let's just give us some time to think about it. So I didn't feel like I had any clear direction to research anything. I'm sorry if I remember that incorrectly, but I didn't even change anything. It's exactly as it was before when we talked about it last time.
I don't remember this at all. Was I here?
That was in April.
Yeah, I was just trying to think. I don't think I was here. I think that was spring break. I think I was down south. So that must be why I don't recall any of this.
Could be.
So caught me a little off
And
guard.
we kind of wouldn't have met here. She's new, and
And you remember it well, we really just kind of discussed, like, who were gonna be the neighboring area, like, who it was gonna impact, and
Yeah.
I feel like we only tabled it just to learn a little bit more about, like, where it was gonna be and
That's
how it was
right.
gonna impact.
let's think about it.
Yeah, I'm good with it, actually, I think I don't care if it's 30 or 90, I mean, I can see, some benefit to it, I think Katie had mentioned, like, Jeremy Foreman's parents would probably want to be, spend the summer here and visit
Sure.
him there, and, the one thing that I did want to see, and see happen, and you kind of just mentioned it, is, just for those tent people that don't have their kitchen, whatever, like, maybe we have, like, 4 or 5 of the locations have a kitchen or a barbecue stand or something covered so that they can, take a break from the tent or whatever. And then maybe do cabins and RVs with the others. But I feel strongly that we have, some of them have some cooking stuff, even if it's just a barbecue pit or something, But the 30 to 90 days, good with that, good with the paving, good with whatever else. Because I've actually ridden past where it's going, and I think it's fine.
Do we want to include like a buffer zone or anything for like
I thought we had
any
one.
external neighbors? Do we have a buffer zone?
So I don't think there's like a strict area, but that definitely, it could be part of this, or it could be part of the conditions that we place on it, depending on the site. That might be site specific, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel strongly about buffer zones and then hedges, and
Yeah.
I don't normally get too excited about plants and trees and all that, but I think in this case it has to be done depending on location.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like it
It's
already.
such a coordinate off a little.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like
Like,
a
there it is.
like a
Yeah.
fence and then some shrubs, like.
Yeah.
These quiet up a bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that could be conditional parts of it, right? Isn't that how that works?
Right, so we can have a couple options. Either we can write that into the code and require certain things that we think it should apply to any RV campground anywhere in the city. We want it to have these certain things, and we write it in the code. Or if there's things that we think, oh, if someone tries to do this right next to a neighborhood, we're gonna need to do this. And that would be more appropriate for conditions that are specific to a certain application.
Well, do we want to spell that out in the code so that people know? Because it's not, this isn't gonna be a conditional use permit.
It is, yeah, if someone wants to do an RV campground, they have to pull a conditional use permit.
But I think we gotta spell them out, is it,
I think there's ones that we definitely do, and then there will be ones later that are, it depends on where they're doing this.
right, but I think we gotta, you know, if it's against residential, we should need to have this. If it's
Right.
against commercial, if they're the first one going in, it's against agricultural, then they need to have, you know, fences for the cows or whatever, but
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that we can say, if it's in this area, it's gonna need this.
Is it too obvious if we add also like some landscaping requirements, like plant some trees for your tenants, you know?
Yeah, I think that would be great, I think that
I
would.
mean, it really brings up the quality of the campground.
It
For
does.
sure, I think that would be a great thing.
I like Scott's idea, I think that's actually gonna be important, I think we should just spell it out in the code. I don't know if we need to like come back to it again so that we can get more to it, I'm not trying to like belabor this, but obviously I'm late to the game.
That's okay, there's two of you here out of the three that haven't really talked about this before. And the mayor wants us to take our time and be thoughtful about what we're doing here. And I would love for the planning commission to go and look at other cities' campground, RV campground codes, maybe places that you like, and think about the parts of those campgrounds that you like and what you want to have in this code. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking more time to
Okay.
think about that.
As I say, we're not in a hurry, just making
No.
sure, okay.
We're not in a hurry,
And-
there's no, nothing impending, it's just that we've
There,
heard.
there must have been through the
rumblings.
grapevine, so through the grapevine about where is this, like,
So the one site that seems to be coming up over and over again is property that's owned by JJ Echo, which is Justin Hardy. And if you were in the city about 3 or 4 years ago, he proposed a big development on the site for apartments, and then he went to townhomes, he was asking to rezone, and that did not get approved. But it's the property, we call it Francis Park, because it's really close to our city park property. So, you know where the dirt road is, the other entrance into the park back there, just down 35, there's a dirt road entrance into the Francis Park. It is just on the other side of that dirt road. So it's.
North.
you showed on the computer.
East, directly east, or the side.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can kind of show you, I'll pull it up on the Google map, I use the parcel viewer a lot, it's kind of like, it's an aerial map, and it shows property lines. So I'll show you where that's at. And so for this property, it's come up many times, but I've also, it's been back and forth. And lately, it's kind of been not gonna happen, but still a good thing to look at this. And I have heard it about other properties too, not just this one, but this one is the one that seems to be coming up over and over again. So, hold on a second, pulling it up. Okay, so, this is the arena in the city park where we are right now, right here. So back behind the arena, there's a couple of properties, and then here's the dirt road, and this is the property that we're talking about, potentially it's not, there's no application now, but this has come up a few times
but most likely.
as the most likely, and there's a piece that's in the city, and then there's also a piece that's outside of the city in the county jurisdiction, and they talked about annexing this back piece into the city to do the higher density housing, which didn't happen.
How does
Now
that,
maybe for this.
how does that fit with our commercial development plan?
So we don't have commercial zoning in that area. We have,
Does it stop there?
I'll show you. All right, so here's our zoning map. Oh, this one makes it hard to like pull up things close. It doesn't want to zoom in. Okay, so this is where we are right now. This blue area is the city public facility zone.
Mhm.
And then that property is down here, and it's yellow on the front of 35, which is residential half. So residential zoning, and then in the back is Ag 1, also residential zoning.
Got it.
Close to the city center is that mixed use zone, city center zone, but it's pretty far from that. And the major commercial zone in Francis is along 32 in the red here.
Are you concerned though that we need to zone that as a commercial to put in campground?
No, I thought it extended further than it does. I didn't realize it stopped right there at that halfway point through the city property. That's all I was just asking. I was like, is that
Yeah.
designated for that? Because I don't want to send mixed messages if that's the case, but.
So the RV campground, you would think that would be a commercial thing, but it's not a commercial zoning, it's Ag 1 or Ag 2.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
know you mentioned
so
that, so that's why I was like,
They probably have to do something on the front. I don't know. They talked about, when I talked with them, they said, well, we would maybe not have anything on the front, have like a buffer with the road, because nobody really wants to camp on the front of the road anyway. And
Sure.
then we have the campground in the back part, just to hit the zoning. So, I don't know, but that is, it's very, very, very not for sure, so,
no, I understand. It's all,
Yeah.
I just want to get caught up.
sure.
I found my favorite campground. It's in Garden City, and I found their code, and it's pretty good. It includes like landscaping requirements, screening and buffering, like playgrounds. So yeah, and it's like the best campground. I love it.
Well, let's look at that and try to incorporate it into what we have, and if any of you want to send me suggestions, like email me, hey, this is what I think the code should look like, I would be more than happy to incorporate that and have us talk about that at the next meeting.
Are we tabling this then?
I mean, I think Scott brought up a very compelling point that, if we, I have two thoughts. We can approve this now if you want and then re-add it, or is it just easier to just leave it open and table it?
I would prefer to table it, and I would prefer that we pass on something to the city council that we really like.
Yeah, so I think, then that, and then if I remember, I can't make a motion. Is that how it works?
I'll have to look into that, but
Pretty sure that's how that
I
works.
motion to table.
I second.
Let's vote.
Aye. Fantastic. All right, let me switch over back to the agenda. The minutes from the last meeting are not quite ready yet. They're very close, but we just didn't quite have enough time, so we'll get to those next time.
Okay.
And then,
Just no.
my only update item, I don't have anything on the agenda for next month other than the RV campground. We want to meet about that. I tried not to have a meeting if it's just a city item, but how do you all feel? Would you really want to come together and talk about this RV campground, or would you rather combine it? Would you rather not have a meeting in July and we don't have another item that we have to address?
I'm good to do whatever you guys want.
Justin?
I was just checking my schedule before I shoot myself in the foot. I'm a bigger fan of shorter meetings than longer meetings, but I realize that affects staff, so I am flexible and can leave that at your discretion for the staff to, I think there's a cost to the city to have you folks here, so that kind of makes sense too, so I guess I would defer to our mayor.
Okay, we'll let him decide what we want to do. Kenna, did you have any? No. Okay.
I really don't mind.
I'm good for weekly meetings, so we can go over every section of the code.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and review that. But yes, I don't mind a quick meeting if that helps the city move. But
Okay.
at the other point is like, if it comes at the expense of the city to have all the folks involved and it makes more sense, then let's just put it to the next one.
Okay.
And I feel like
See what y'all-
Jeremy can make that call.
All right, I'll leave it to our fearless leader, so. Planner update, not much, like I said, is happening application wise. There are a few things on the horizon. So I'm not gonna say there won't be a meeting in July, but There might be, there might not. There's no guarantee at this point. I'm just waiting to see if there's a couple things out there. If they get their act going, it could be on the July meeting, but they really hope to get going like right now. So we'll see. And then I'll think about the RV campground code and talk to Jeremy about it as well. Also, the Oakley Parade, city usually participates in the Oakley Parade, and we have a float promoting Frontier Days. And this year, the city council only has 2 people. Usually the city council does this, it's not even a float, it's like they have a side-by-side they decorate and they hand out popsicles or candy. And this year, they only have 2 council members that are gonna be able to participate in the parade. So they're thinking about not doing it. They wanted me to ask you if the planning commission would like to, anyone on the planning commission would like to participate, or be willing, really, be willing to help out and participate in the parade.
Which day is it? Sorry, what was this?
It's on the 4th of July.
So Katie, you don't want to do that?
I actually will not be here, but
Uh,
I have been in the parade before.
I'm not
I don't do parades, too hot.
I mean, maybe.
Okay,
Do you wanna, like, who is involved?
so I think, Shanna could do it, and was it Clint? Maybe Sam, maybe it was Shannon and Sam.
I mean, it doesn't really matter, just who should I talk to, I guess, is.
I'll let them, I will pass it on to the city council that you might be available if they want to get it, pull it
It
together.
might be kind of fun, like, I have a car trailer, we could throw some hay bales on it, and,
Take your son.
yeah, he
Yeah,
would, he
he'd
would
love
fund
that.
that.
That'd be great.
So, but I also don't wanna end up being like the only person doing this, cause I do not have the bandwidth for that.
Okay,
So, yeah, I guess if somebody wants to call me and talk about it,
okay, I'll let them know that you might be willing.
like, I could, yeah, I'll run it by the actual boss in my life, and then, go from there.
Okay, McKenna, be available for the parade.
No,
Okay,
I have kids. I want to catch the candy with them.
that is the best part.
Right?
How am I make money throw it? I don't want to eat it.
No, I keep it in my bag and it like lasts for like a year. I ration it, so it's great.
Gotcha. Well, do we have any other items, Katie?
That's it for me, so motion to adjourn.
We need a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn. I second.
Let's all vote.
I.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it.